Hey guys, welcome to episode number 589. Today's Monday, so it's Update Monday. And today we are going to spend a little time in the basement and a little time outside by the greenhouse and the pond. I've been a little frustrated down here in the basement working on prepping this wall so that we can rebuild our rack. The tanks are on the way. The 50-gallon ZoomEd lowboy tanks are on the way, and I'm doing as much as I can to get this room ready to receive those tanks. But I've hit a few setbacks, which we'll talk about in this video. But before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you want to help support this channel, you can always go check out myaquariumbox.com and betaoasis.com. All right, guys, let's take a look at the state of this basement before we get tanks in it, and then we'll go outside, then maybe we'll come back inside and continue to work down here in the basement. We've got a little venting to do as well, so come along with me and learn how to be a better aquarist. All right, guys, we're gonna start this week's video down in the basement, and we've got the bulkhead open. This bulkhead has basically been open for the last week since I first applied the paint stripper to this floor. And as you can see, we've still got plenty of paint still stuck to this floor. And this has been the most frustrating part so far in this project. I'm sure we'll find plenty of other things to complain about along the way, but so far this one has been pretty nasty. I knew this was gonna smell, this Rust-Oleum paint stripper, but it's really the only thing that I could find to chemically remove the paint from these floors. Now, this is a concrete floor, and we've got at least 2 coats of what is probably an epoxy-based basement sealer on this floor. And the reason I know that is, well, obviously you can see the bare concrete. In some places, we did get down to bare concrete, but then like over here, you can actually see it best. We've got 2 different shades of red or maroon paint on this floor. And I know that this is the original paint that was on the floor, and then I know that this was painted over the original paint that was on the floor. So we've got 2 layers of paint to deal with on most of this floor. In some places you can see we did get the paint to come up, especially when it was just 1 layer of paint. It worked okay, but I took an entire gallon of this Rust-Oleum paint stripper, which is designed for concrete floors, and I spread it evenly across this entire surface. Now, on the back, it says 1 gallon is good for 75 square feet, and this is about 4 feet by 24 feet, so it's about 100 square feet. So I applied it a little thin, and I did have 2 coats of really difficult paint to remove. And this is the result, and I'm not super pleased with the result. And it's taken so long to get the smell out of this basement that I've got 2 more gallons of this stuff, which is like 1.5 times the amount that I would need to coat this once. I got two more gallons of this stuff, and I'm seriously considering not even using it because of how difficult it was to remove the smell from the basement. I basically have like 4 of these windows that have been open for a week, and every chance I can get while I'm here, I open the bulkhead and I stick a fan down here to blow fresh air in or blow the smelly air out of this basement. It's pretty nasty stuff. Not something that I would want to sit around in for any length of time, and so I'm a little upset about that, and I'm a little upset about how little it actually did to clean this floor. Essentially what I did was I spread it out using the stiff bristle brush here, and I let it sit for anywhere from like a half hour to 4 hours, I believe the instructions said. And I did see it working. Like you can actually see it did a pretty good job in some places. Like right here, I wouldn't mind just painting over what's left here because I don't think this is going to come up very easily. But in some areas you can see we've got most of the top layer up, which is the darker stuff, but then we've got the lighter colored red right underneath it, and it didn't even get to that layer. Some places it did, like we're down to bare concrete over here, but some places it didn't. And you know, I could blame that on spreading it too thin. I could blame it on 2 coats of paint on the floor instead of 1. Might be a combination of both. So I'm not defeated yet, but it was quite a bit of work to get this far, and it really doesn't look like I did much of anything, which is kind of the disheartening part about it. So and I've had to deal with a lot to get it cleaned up to the point where I can even like stand down here and talk without you know, just having the air smell like rancid. But once it was dry, what I started with was this paint scraper, and I was basically just scraping the floor like this, and a lot of it did come up. In some places we got quite a bit up, but in other places it just didn't come up at all, or it doesn't look like it came up because there's 2 layers and it just chewed through one of the 2 layers. So we did go out and buy a larger metal scraper here. So with this, I'm able to scrape the floor a lot quicker, which is good, but there wasn't a lot to lift up off the floor, which was the problem. So I lifted everything I could up off the floor, vacuumed it all up, all the nasty, you know, red paint boogers, and this is what we're left with. And I have mopped this floor. I went out and got the cheapest mop I could find because I'm planning on throwing it out after this. Bought the cheapest mop I could find, and I've mopped this floor at least a dozen times. I make sure the entire thing is coated with water. I make sure to change the water in the bucket and wring the mop out as best I can, and let the entire surface dry, and then just repeat the process over and over and over again. Got a little box fan over in the corner to help dry it, and I'm hoping that every time that I mop the floor I get some of the residue from that Rust-Oleum up off the surface of that floor to return it to just either bare concrete or the paint. Any of that residual stuff, like the chemical stuff that's on the floor, it just, if it stays there, it continues to smell. And if you don't get it up, if you try to paint over it, it's just going to be a complete disaster. So yeah, this has been a little bit of a task, but I have learned a few things about the basement and what's been done down here in the process. Like you can see, these walls were originally painted white, and the roller hit the floor as they were painting the walls. So the walls were painted first, and then the floors were painted after that, and then someone else came in and repainted the floors without stripping the floors. So the walls, I don't think are going to be much of an issue. Again, we're just going to use some cement, and maybe we'll do this later today, is mix up a little bit of this hydraulic cement into little buckets and just mix as much as we can use in a few minutes, because it sets really fast. Like within 3 to 5 minutes it's going to set up. So we're just going to use a little bit and start patching these walls. And that's probably all we're going to be able to do down here today, because I just can't stomach the thought of throwing 2 more gallons of this stuff on the floor and then having to deal with it, because I'm going to be down here for another solid week, just trying to clean up after it and air the basement out again. So that's sort of been my life for the last week, is just mopping this floor, scraping the floor, cleaning up after this stuff. Not a huge fan of it. I'm assuming if you've got some sort of easier paints to remove, like a latex paint or something that's just not stuck on very well, I'm sure it will lift it up amazingly well. But when you've got basically like the toughest kind of paint possible, epoxy floor paints, it does work, but it doesn't work well enough to make the job easy, and it's certainly not an enjoyable process. So live and learn, I guess. I probably will finish off this portion of floor with this stuff and just waste another week trying to clear up this floor. And I'm really hoping if I can coat it on thick, it's going to get down to the bare concrete and I'll be happy with the result, even though I'm going to have to deal with the cleanup and the mess. If that doesn't happen, if I'm still looking at a floor that looks similar to this after dumping another 2 gallons of product on this floor, I'm going to be kind of pissed, and we'll be 2 weeks behind schedule basically with this build. Now, there are other methods to strip paint from a floor. There are like diamond coated, like rotary tools, like sander tool type tools that can be used to take stuff like this off, but you do need to hook it up to a shop vac, and you do need to be wearing like a respirator and everything like that, because that'll get up in the air and it'll be fine particulate matter there as well. So it's tough work any way you do it, and we're just gonna try to make the best of a bad situation here and wrap this up. And this is only 4 feet of this floor. We got like another 10, 12 feet of floor here, which is full of stuff. So there's no way we're gonna do the rest of this floor the same way. We're gonna have to find a better way, and it's gonna have to be done at a different time. We're just gonna get this floor ready and get this wall ready so that we can start building the rack and get the tanks in, and then we'll have to worry about the rest of the room at a later date. That's the rant. That's the the progress update here, and sorry it doesn't look like more has gone on. I've just been sitting down here cursing and mopping and cursing and mopping. So, lesson learned. Let's go do something fun. All right, we are out at the greenhouse. It's been a few weeks since we've shot some footage out here, and boy, have things changed. We've got a jungle growing in the greenhouse, and I'm pretty happy with the progress that we've made in here. Now, as we walk through, you'll notice we've got quite a few string bean vines, and if we look closer, you can actually see we've got quite a few beans growing. We've had enough of these grow, in fact, that I've been snacking on them basically for the past 2 weeks, and every couple days I come out here and we've got like a couple dozen more beans that are this size to harvest, which is pretty cool. Haven't fed any of these to the fish yet. I've just been eating them as they come off the vine, so cool to see there. I'm gonna snack on one right now as we talk. Couple issues here that I've seen is I don't think that I strung these up good enough, like attached them to wire or some sort of trellis system, because what we got going on is a lot of falling over. A lot of these plants are just growing, I don't know, like a foot or 2 tall, and then they just fall over. Some of them have fallen over into the water and the leaves get all nasty. Some of them have just sort of collapsed on themselves and on all the other plants that are in this raft. So when I do beans again, string beans in the greenhouse, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them their own raft, and right when I plant them in the net pots, I think what I'm going to do is tie a string to the bottom of the net pot and just run it straight up to the roof of the greenhouse immediately before they even start growing. That way it gives them something to cling onto, wrap around, and hopefully climb. Because the ones that are doing the best are the ones that are climbing
All the other ones are just sort of falling over. This one in the back is actually falling over the side. So yeah, the string beans have been doing amazing. Everything else in here is suffering because it's just not getting enough sunlight. So we do have some growth on like the hot peppers, which is good with these guys. I don't know, we'll see. I might have to separate them, otherwise they might just get drowned out here by these string beans. But it's nice, it's awesome that we have some actual vegetables growing in here, because that's the whole point of this, right? Is to have the fish, but also the vegetables. So that's awesome. You can see now that our water has cleared up as well. You can see we've got nice, long, healthy root growth underneath the water here. And you can actually see the fish as well. Should probably try feeding them. Maybe we'll do that in next week's video. We'll get like a GoPro out and feed them, because I think the water's clear enough now that you can see them. And if we throw a GoPro in there around noontime, we'll probably get some good footage of fish underneath the water. But in this raft, we've got a lot of the tomato plants. As you can see, these are actually outgrowing my tomato plants that are outdoors at this point, which is awesome. That's really the whole point of this, right? Is to grow big, healthy plants and get a lot of fruit and vegetables out of them. So tomato plants, the cherry tomato plants are growing like crazy. They stayed small for a very long time. We had a rainy month and there just wasn't enough sun in here, but now that the sun is out, they are exploding in growth. So I don't know if it's just more sun or they just got the right amount of root mass to be able to really pop, but they are doing well. The only one that's not doing so hot is this one. He kind of fell over. I don't really know why, but again, I don't have any trellis system set up. I don't have any support for these guys, so when they fall over, they just sort of fall over and die because they hit the water, which is a little bit of a problem. So again, tomatoes, we'll probably have to plan on having less of those and give them more space in the future and give them something where they can sort of hold on to so that they just don't fall over and die. We've got our restart of our lettuce here. I've got to admit, I haven't been keeping a very close eye on this. The first week that this sprouted, I was keeping an eye on it, and then I just sort of let it get out of control again. I have not transplanted this into a raft, and at this point, I don't think I will. What I might just do is let this grow for a couple more weeks and then cut it all as like microgreens and just make a salad and call it a day. Yeah, I don't think I have the raft space at this point. There's too many big healthy plants growing at this point that I'm really curious to see how many more string beans we're gonna get. Curious to see if we're gonna get any hot peppers, and then tomatoes. I'm really looking forward to the cherry tomatoes. I'm hoping that these start to bloom soon and we get some flowers and then we get some tomatoes out of these things. We do have some cilantro that's sort of hanging in here. Again, it's getting shaded out. We got some basil here. This one is really nice and healthy. Smells fantastic too. So we got a couple nice basil plants here. Again, a lot of these ones in this row are just getting choked out by the gigantic cherry tomato plants that are just towering over them. So we don't get a whole lot of sun out here anyways, and so when you combine that with you know, plants that are fighting each other for that sunlight, it's just it's kind of slow growing. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of people that are already harvesting cherry tomatoes and I'm just sitting here looking at green plants. So it's just how it goes. There's not a whole lot I can change about that because that's just the location I'm in with mature trees all around. But you do see our lettuce. I saved a few of these lettuce plants out back. They're just sort of all over the place. They fell over, then they continue to grow upright, and I don't know. Again, when I harvest this tray of lettuce, I'll probably just harvest that lettuce and see what I can get out of it, and then move on. Maybe separate some of this stuff and spread it out a little bit more to give it a chance to grow as well. But yeah, I mean, I think what I'm learning is My tallest plants that I'm planning to grow probably need to be in the front here, and then also on the side there, and then all the low growing stuff probably just has to be in the middle so that it has a chance to actually get some decent light throughout the day. But all in all, I'm pretty pleased by all of our aquaponics vegetables that we've got going on here. This is a huge improvement from the chop and flip 55-gallon barrel project that I did with the hydrogen media a couple years ago. That didn't do so well, but this is certainly a lot more promising, and this is just proof that you can grow vegetables in an aquaponics setup with fish without fertilizer, and it does work. I'm really shocked at how many string beans we've gotten so far, and I know with a little bit more care this could have turned out a lot better. And right now it's just like a pile of leaves that have fallen all over each other, but whatever, what are you gonna do? Live and learn, right? Now I know to set this stuff up properly right from the beginning. It doesn't even matter that the plant is only an inch tall, it just needs to be set up for success, and we will certainly do that for next time. But for now, all of these plants are doing fantastic, and those are the first 3 bins in our 6-bin system. The other 3 bins here also have fish. This one has anglers and cory cats in it, and actually these are albino cory cats, so you can see like 3, 4, 5 of them back there. Not that well. Again, we'll get the GoPro out maybe next week and see what we can see. But we've just got like a ton of floating plant growth here. We got the duckweed, we got the miniature water lettuce, we've got frog bit in here, just some floating trays and just floating plants all over the place. And they're doing really well. It was slow at the start, again, because it was just really rainy, cloudy weather, but as soon as the sun came out, these things started to pop. So they are reproducing like crazy. And we also have some other plants in here. Again, aquarium plants, anubias and banana plants and everything else. There's some Java ferns in one of these. I don't know. I just don't have the space to set everything up correctly at this point because everything is just green and growing all over the place. So it's a good problem to have. And I'm actually really excited about these low profile overflow screens that attach. It's just a slip connection with my bulkheads in the back. These have done really well. I haven't worried about these at all with the amount of flow that we've got coming in here. Essentially, this is a 1-inch line and return line, and it's got 6 valves on it to split that 1 inch of basically return water into these 6 tubs, and then it's a 1-inch overflow with that low profile screen over the front. And as you can see, even with all the duckweed and the small plant matter, it's doing well and it's not clogging up. And I haven't come out here with water like a lot higher than it should be. I haven't come out here with anything overflowing or anything like that. So those have been doing really well. And I think what I'm going to do is continue to use those on my ZoomEd 50-gallon lowboy tanks when I get all of those in. Those are on the way, by the way. So super excited about that. We'll talk more about that when we get downstairs. The sensitive plant, again, if I was to pick my favorite aquarium plant for a shady greenhouse, the sensitive plant would be my favorite by far. It just does amazingly well. I got 4 or 5 little pieces that were like 6 or 8 inches long from Uncle Ned's a month or so ago, and look at them now. I mean, I just threw them in this floating planter to give them a place to like hang out and not drown and just like establish themselves. They really don't like to be moved a whole lot, so you put them in one spot and then they just grow and grow and grow. And as you can see, we've got one that's like snaked all the way over here, and he's all the way over here now. So So they're like 2 or 3 feet long at this point. And lots of growth, lots of new growth. You can see the old stems here are sort of woody, and then the new stems are green, and all of this is brand new growth. So, and I mean brand new growth like within the last week. So it's growing quick, and I couldn't be happier about that. This tub has all of our plecos and snails. I do feed a lot of green beans to these guys. As you can see, they've got a lot of green leaf matter as well floating on the top. And the mystery snails have been doing really well. In fact, here's one right now that's chilling out at the top. And if you keep these guys in your aquariums, you know that they like to have a couple inches of spare space at the top of the tank so that they can lay eggs. And this is not a big clutch of eggs by any stretch of the imagination. It's probably one of the smallest I've ever seen, but it is the first clutch of eggs from these mystery snails. So what they'll do is the female will climb out of the water like you see here and find a nice place to lay her eggs, and then she'll lay a clutch of eggs above the water line. I'm just gonna let these chill out here, and I'll let them hatch on their own, and then they fall into the water and they'll continue to grow just like the rest of the snails that are in here. There's probably a couple dozen mystery snails in here. There's probably like 3 or 4 dozen plecos in here. And again, you wouldn't really know it from looking at it because it's a dark tub and there's a lot of plant cover, but that's what these guys like. The snails and the plecos. So I'm just gonna continue to grow all these plants and suck up all the nitrates from the water and keep growing vegetables as well. Over here, we've had an explosion of growth as well. This tank is basically completely clogged with floating plant life. I do have some of the fake boxwood garlands in here as well. So it's not all living plants, but mostly. And again, as you can see, this thing is completely clogged up with duckweed over here by the overflow, and no problem whatsoever. It's not impacting the flow rate of that overflow, which is good. We got some emerged plant growth over here, which is kind of crazy. I forget what this is, it's like water wisteria or something, but very interesting when it sort of grows above water. It sends off these very spindly looking leaves as opposed to the thicker leaves that you would normally see if it was underwater. So kind of interesting to see there. Some of it's dying back, but a lot of it is just sort of exploding out the top here. So anyways, I'm just gonna keep letting all this stuff grow and see what happens. I don't really have a plan for any of it besides just watching what happens, and whatever works well, we're just going to repeat and do more of that for next year, which I think is you know, all we can ask for. It's been a great season so far out here, and I'm loving it. I'm loving trying a whole bunch of different things and seeing what works. We do have a curious mystery snail that's pulling himself out of the water here. And we got another one over here. So I know that if you keep these in aquariums, they will sometimes end up on the floor. I haven't noticed any of them fall out onto the floor in the greenhouse yet, but give it 5 minutes and this guy might end up on the floor. We'll have to see. But yeah, I think they're just hunting around looking for a good place to lay their eggs, and hopefully one day we'll come out and we'll actually see them laying their eggs, because that's actually a really cool thing to watch happen. So until then, this is what's going on in the greenhouse. Lots of growth, lots of green. The greenhouse is living up to its name. Let's go check out the pond. All right, before we get to the pond, I thought it was worthwhile to take a look at our terrestrial plants that are being grown in soil like normal plants would be. and some of them are doing really well. Again, the tomatoes, they're about the same size, maybe a little bit smaller than the ones in the greenhouse. These ones have been dealing with a lot of pests though. Like you can see, this leaf on this zucchini or summer squash is just totally covered with slime. There's a lot of slugs and a lot of, I don't know, it's mostly slugs, I think, because it's been so rainy for the last month that these things have taken a little bit of a hit, but they do seem like they're growing, and they've gotten plenty of water. And we do have a number of flowers, and it's mostly on the zucchini and the summer squash. So flower, 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 lots of flowers, more flowers. So that's the good news. Our cucumbers, which we actually started a couple weeks later than everything else, are growing fantastically. They don't seem like they're getting picked on as much by the slugs and other pests, so they've been doing well, and they've been growing big and tall. So much so that we're probably going to have to separate these fabric planters. I'm going to have to pick them up and move them around and spread them out a little bit more, because if these things do take off, they will spread across the ground quite a bit. We do have some string beans as well out here. Here's another good one, but again, they're sort of all fallen over. So there was one plant there and it's sort of fallen over this way. The one here might have died. I don't know. There's one here and it fell over that way, like onto the ground. And as soon as it gets anywhere near the ground, it seems like I've got woodchucks and chipmunks and bunnies and everything else that just grabs them and eats them. So we'll see what actually survives out here. I mean, most people in this area, if they keep an outdoor garden, they've got like a fence around it to keep all of the critters out. So we'll see what actually makes it and what gets eaten. But we got a lot more green out here, so that's good. And again, we got basil and cilantro growing, very tiny. Some leftover plants as well, just sort of hanging out. I'm hoping that if anything is coming to eat my plants, they're gonna eat these first, because these are just like the leftover plants that were half dead. And even those are flowering, but I don't think that they're gonna make it. But hopefully those get eaten first. Those are my sacrificial offerings. Anyways, as we move over to the pond, Marvin still chilling out back here, having a good time. And our bonsais are doing very well also. We do need to probably pick these up at some point and do a little work on them. Like you can see, we got some green growth that we have to trim back, and we can just check these over and make sure that they're doing well. They've probably gotten not enough sunlight and too much rain over the last month, as with everything else. So they're not quite as happy as my banana plant is. This thing, again, is just exploding. I don't know if you guys remember this when I had it indoors over the winter, but it was just about dead because it survived under like a fluorescent light all winter long, being neglected. And as you can see now, we've got gigantic new leaves, huge leaves. Like every time I come out here, almost every day, there's a new leaf that has grown. So these are doing really well, and I have said that I need to transplant this again. I've already transplanted it once this year. I'm gonna do it again. And when I do it, I'll probably transplant it into 2 or 3 pots, because we got little plants here and we got bigger plants over here. So I might be able to get 3 plants out of this one pot, and that I think would be awesome. So that's on my list to do. I just need to get around to it. And it's getting a little late, so it's getting a little dark back here. But as you can see, the pond is doing fantastic as well. As it gets warmer out, it's important to have some good aeration in your ponds to make sure that the oxygen level stays up for your fish. So that's what we've done there. We've got good flow returning through our pump, and I don't know if you guys can see. Let's sit down for a minute and see if these fish will come around. But the UV sterilizer has done a great job at clearing up this water. You can see the sticks like a foot or two underwater at this point, even this late at night. And you can see the orange and white flashes of those feeder goldfish that are now close to a foot long, some of them anyways. And they're loving it out here. I'm loving it too. I gotta spend more time out here just chilling. I think maybe one day I should just do a live stream out by the pond and just hang out with you guys, and we can just talk about fish. But the water hyacinth has probably doubled, I would say, in size. Not a tremendous amount of growth. We've seen a lot better growth in the greenhouse of the smaller floating plants, but I really feel like within the next month or two we'll probably get about 50% coverage of this pond just through the water hyacinth alone. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll see if it happens. Again, we're in a pretty good shade here most of the day, so if this was a full sun pond, I would think the 5 pieces of water hyacinth that I originally bought would probably already be covering the whole pond. But you know, you work with what you get, and that's what we have. So we do have a bunch of shabunkin goldfish in here. They are like 3 or 4 inches, and as far as I can tell, most of them did make it. When I broke down my aquariums and my fish room and moved them out here, most of them did make it. When I feed them, I see quite a few, at least a couple dozen, and I think I threw 3 dozen in here. So that's a good sign. And again, we'll just have to film during a time of day where you can see more, but you can see that there are fish in here. We'll just have to bust that GoPro out around noontime and get some good footage, but there are fish all over the place in this pond. So pretty excited about that. They seem happy, all the plants seem happy, so I'd say we've got a good ecosystem going on here out in the pond. Anyways guys, it's getting a little dark out here. We got more work to do inside, so let's head back down to the fish room.
All right, and it is time for your last final weekly reminder that the ACA is coming up really fast. It is next week, July 18th through the 21st at the Red Lion Hotel in Cromwell, Connecticut. If you live anywhere within driving distance, you want to go register for the ACA now. You want to put in for the days off. You want to take a nice long weekend and a nice drive to Cromwell, Connecticut and hang out with me and a whole bunch of other fish nerds as we enjoy the American Cichlid Association's annual convention. It's gonna be awesome. You can find me in the vendor room. I'm gonna be hanging out there all weekend long, talking to you guys. Maybe we'll do a live stream, hang out, talk about fish, talk about life, talk about fish rooms, whatever you wanna do. It's gonna be a blast. If you still have not registered for the ACA and you think you wanna go do it right now. And when you do, make sure you use the code YTGJ as your middle name when you register for the ACA's annual convention this year. When you use YTGJ, when you register for your ticket for the ACA this year, be one of the first 10 people to come find me at the My Aquarium Box booth, and I'll give you a free t-shirt. Who doesn't love free t-shirts? Definitely go do it. Definitely attend. It's gonna be awesome. This show moves around, so if you live anywhere within driving distance, you want to be there. It's going to be a great time, and there's gonna be a lot of great people there as well. Now, if you don't have the entire weekend to spend at the ACA, you can still attend, and you don't even need a ticket. All you need to do is make sure you show up for the giant Sunday auction. It's gonna be mostly cichlids, but there's also some dry goods and some plant sales and other things like that. But if you have a fish room, if you have spare cichlids, catfish, anything like that, you can bag those up and bring them with you on Sunday to the giant cichlid auction. It's gonna be awesome. And if you've never been to an auction like that before, you don't need to bag anything up. Just attend, bring some money, and see what it's all about. And then next year, hopefully you can bag up some of your fish and participate more. It's a learning experience. If you've never been to one of these things, you need to go. Because if you're watching this video, it means you love fish and you should be around other people that love fish. So go register for the ACA and I'll see you there next week. Alright guys, it's getting pretty late, but here is the aftermath of the hydraulic cement. And if there's one product that works as advertised, I would say it's this stuff. It says it sets up in 3 to 5 minutes, and by the time I was done mixing it, I think the pot life was already half over. So I did have to mix it in many small batches in order to apply it to the wall. But already I would say it's mostly dry. So what I'm going to do is probably give this a full day to sort of completely dry and set up here on the wall. I'll probably sand it just a little bit to knock off any of the edges. And then this wall should be ready to paint as early as tomorrow, which is exciting. A lot of these holes were either there to begin with, just in the concrete wall when it was poured, but a lot of the smaller ones are holes that I drilled over the years in this wall for various projects. We had a shelf over there. We had our air pump up here. We had our wall-mounted fry rack right here. So I tried to patch as many of those holes as I can, just to make sure we're not compromising this wall too much. So always a good thing to clean up after yourself, and that's what I've done here. So I think painting this with Drylock will go very smoothly. That's something that we're going to work on hopefully in next week's video, although we are also headed to the ACA, which will be a lot of fun. At least we'll be packing for the ACA, so we'll see what we get into. But for now, this is the wall, this is the floor. We've got a lot of extra cement chunks that we're gonna need to scrape off the floor, vacuum up, sweep up, but otherwise I think the wall is in pretty good shape for painting soon, so that's exciting. Alright guys, and that's gonna do it for this week's video. It was another week of cleanup and prep work to get this fish room put back together. As I said, I spent the majority of the week messing around with the paint stripper on the floor. I didn't like the results. It's gonna be another week of hard work to hopefully get the floor into shape so that next week we can paint the wall, we can paint the floor, and then we'll be ready to start working on the stands and the tanks when they arrive. Now, we've got a lot going on in the next few weeks. We have to pack everything up for the ACA convention. We've got to head down to the ACA convention. We're gonna spend a long weekend there. Make sure to be there if you're anywhere nearby. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We've got the painting to do on the floor and on the walls. We've also got a lot of lumber that we have to buy and cut up to build stands. All of those tanks, those 50-gallon Zoom Ed lowboy tanks, are gonna be arriving soon. We've got to figure out how to best drill and paint all of those tanks and get them onto the stand. We're also gonna paint the stand. So all of that is happening in the next few weeks. It's going to be incredibly busy. Hopefully I can get to it all, and we're just gonna take this build one step at a time. We can only do so much with the time that we have, and we're gonna try to make the best of it as long as we can get past the paint stripper. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you wanna help support this channel, you can always go check out myaquariumbox.com and betaoasis.com. All right, guys, one final reminder, go sign up for the ACA. You're gonna regret it if you don't go, so definitely go. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later.